The text message buzzed against the polished wooden table, its vibration loud enough to echo in the near-empty hotel room. Sandra's fingers trembled as she reached for her phone, her reading glasses perched precariously on her nose. The words hit her like a freight train. "You're fired. Sorry." Just 3 words, yet they carried the weight of an entire career crumbling into dust. Her vision blurred, not from the lack of proper prescription but from the sudden rush of blood that made her temples throb violently. She read it again and again, each time hoping the letters would rearrange themselves into something less devastating. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the bustling conference center across the street where her colleagues were likely enjoying their complimentary breakfast buffet. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had been part of organizing this very event, had spent countless late nights ensuring every detail was perfect, down to the color of the napkins. Sandra's hand instinctively reached for the chair behind her, missing it by inches as she collapsed onto the carpeted floor instead. At 62, with 35 years of dedicated service to the company, she had never imagined receiving termination notice through a text message. Her mind raced through the events of the past week, the subtle changes in her boss's tone during meetings, the way younger colleagues had started addressing her differently, almost patronizingly. She had dismissed these signs as mere paranoia, the natural consequence of being one of the oldest employees in an increasingly youth-obsessed corporate world. The worst part wasn't even the firing itself, it was the timing. Stranded in this city, hundreds of miles away from home, with no warning or explanation. Her flight back was scheduled for tomorrow evening, booked under the company's travel policy that now felt like a cruel joke. She remembered how diligently she had followed every protocol, how careful she had been to maintain her professional dignity even when others around her seemed to care less about such formalities. And now, here she was, discarded like yesterday's memo. Her breathing grew shallow as panic set in. The room began to feel suffocating despite its spaciousness. Outside, the morning sun cast long shadows across the city skyline, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside room 1204. Sandra's eyes darted toward her neatly packed suitcase in the corner, clothes carefully folded, toiletries arranged precisely as she had always done during business trips. Everything about her life had been orderly, predictable, until this moment. Reaching for the complimentary water bottle on the nightstand, her hand shook so badly that she spilled half of it on her blouse before managing a sip. The cold liquid did little to calm her racing heart. 35 years reduced to a 3-word text message. 35 years of early mornings, missed family gatherings, painstaking attention to detail, all gone in an instant, without so much as a face-to-face conversation. She wondered if anyone at the conference knew yet, if they were discussing her abrupt departure over their lattes and croissants. Through the haze of shock and humiliation, one thought kept piercing through: why hadn't he at least called? Even a video conference termination would have been more humane than this impersonal dismissal. The realization that her decades of loyalty could be terminated with such casual disregard left her feeling physically ill. Her stomach churned, and she barely made it to the bathroom in time before nausea overwhelmed her. As she knelt on the cold tile floor, gripping the toilet seat, Sandra couldn't help but think about all the young interns she had mentored over the years. She had taught them the importance of professional courtesy, of treating people with respect regardless of their position in the company hierarchy. Apparently, those lessons had fallen on deaf ears, at least where her own boss was concerned. The bitter taste in her mouth wasn't just from the sickness, it was from the knowledge that everything she had believed in, everything she had worked for, had been betrayed in the most callous manner imaginable. When Sandra finally managed to pull herself together, the clock showed it was nearly noon. She stared at her reflection in the mirror above the dresser, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at her. Her usually immaculate appearance was ruined, makeup smeared from crying, hair escaping its neat bun in wild strands. But it was her eyes that shocked her most. They looked hollow, defeated, like someone had reached inside and snatched away her spirit. She forced herself to stand up straight, to smooth out her rumpled clothes. Years of professionalism demanded she maintain some semblance of dignity, even in this private moment of despair. The first thing she needed was information. Why had this happened? Was it performance-related? Budget cuts? Or was it simply age discrimination dressed up as corporate restructuring? Her laptop sat on the desk, mocking her with its silence. Every fiber of her being wanted to reach out, to email HR, to call her boss directly, but something held her back. Instead, she found herself scrolling through her contacts list, wondering who she could trust. The names blurred together, colleagues she had worked with for years, people she had celebrated promotions with, shared office gossip with, helped navigate personal crises. How many of them would side with the company now that she was officially persona non grata? Her thumb hovered over her closest friend's name, then moved away. No, she couldn't burden anyone with this, not yet. The conference center loomed large in her thoughts. Should she go there? Confront her colleagues face to face? Show them that she wasn't going to slink away quietly? Pride warred with practicality in her mind. If she went, what would she say? How would she explain herself? More importantly, how would they react? Would they avoid her eyes, pretend not to see her walking through the halls? Or worse, offer pitying looks and awkward condolences? Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since dinner last night. Food seemed like an impossible concept right now, but she knew she needed to keep her strength up. Maybe room service would provide a temporary distraction from her racing thoughts. As she reached for the menu, her eyes caught sight of the conference schedule she had meticulously prepared weeks ago. Today's keynote speaker was supposed to be her. The irony hit her like another punch to the gut. Her replacement was probably already delivering her carefully crafted presentation, using her slides, her research, her work. Suddenly, anger surged through her veins, hot and fierce. Who did they think they were, stealing her life's work like this? Throwing her away after all these years of dedication? The initial shock was giving way to something darker, more dangerous. Her mind began racing with possibilities, ways to make them pay for this betrayal, to show them exactly what they had lost. She had access to everything: financial records, client databases, internal communications. One keystroke could bring the entire operation crashing down. But no, she couldn't do that. Could she? Sandra paced the room, her heels clicking against the hard floor. She had always prided herself on her integrity, her professionalism. Was she really considering throwing all that away in a moment of blind rage? Yet the alternative, walking away quietly, accepting this injustice, felt equally impossible. There had to be another way, some middle ground between complete capitulation and total destruction. Her thoughts turned to her team, the young professionals she had nurtured and guided over the years. What would happen to them now? Would their projects be shut down? Their careers derailed because of this sudden upheaval? The idea of leaving them adrift in the corporate sea filled her with guilt. Maybe there was a way to protect them, to ensure their hard work didn't go to waste. But how could she possibly accomplish that from here, stranded in this hotel room with nothing but her wounded pride and a burning sense of injustice? The afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the room as Sandra wrestled with her conscience. Each passing minute brought new waves of emotion: anger, fear, sadness, determination, all swirling together in a toxic cocktail that threatened to consume her completely. She needed to make a decision, to choose a path forward. But which one? And at what cost? As twilight settled over the city, Sandra's thoughts crystallized into a single burning purpose. She wouldn't go quietly into the night, nor would she destroy everything she had built. Instead, she would expose the truth, about her firing, about the company's practices, about everything they had tried to sweep under the rug. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she drafted emails, compiled documents, and organized evidence. 35 years in the company had given her access to information that could shake the entire organization to its core. First, she created a secure cloud storage account, uploading years' worth of documentation, performance reviews showing consistent excellence, emails detailing discriminatory practices, memos outlining unethical business decisions. Each file was carefully labeled and dated, creating an irrefutable paper trail. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, but her resolve hardened with each passing minute. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about justice. The hardest part came next, reaching out to her network. Sandra started with her closest allies, the ones who had witnessed the gradual shift in company culture firsthand. To her surprise, several responded immediately, eager to share their own stories of mistreatment and cover-ups. One former colleague sent her a trove of internal audit reports that clearly showed systematic age discrimination. Another provided recordings of executive meetings where layoffs were discussed in chillingly clinical terms. Each piece of evidence added fuel to the fire burning within her. Then came the media outreach. Sandra knew better than to go directly to major news outlets. Corporate lawyers would shut that down before it even started. Instead, she contacted independent journalists, bloggers who specialized in corporate accountability. She shared her story with careful precision, offering them access to verified documents while maintaining plausible deniability. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, her encrypted messaging app was flooded with requests for interviews and additional information. But Sandra's actions weren't limited to digital warfare. She began making discreet phone calls to key clients, sharing just enough information to plant seeds of doubt about the company's stability and ethics. Her years of relationship building paid off as several major accounts expressed concern about continuing their partnerships. The beauty of her approach lay in its subtlety. Nothing she did could be traced directly back to her, yet the cumulative effect was devastating. In the hotel's business center, she printed out copies of crucial documents, mailing them to various regulatory agencies under anonymous cover. Each envelope contained a different piece of the puzzle, ensuring that even if some were intercepted, the full picture would eventually emerge. Her meticulous nature proved invaluable as she cross-referenced dates, names, and transactions, creating a web of evidence that would be nearly impossible to unravel. As midnight approached, Sandra realized she was no longer alone in her crusade. Former employees who had been similarly wronged began reaching out, offering their support and additional information. A group chat formed organically, growing rapidly as word spread through professional networks. They shared strategies, divided tasks, and supported each other emotionally. For the first time since receiving that fateful text message, Sandra felt a glimmer of hope, not for herself, but for the possibility of real change. Yet amidst this whirlwind of activity, doubts continued to gnaw at her conscience. Was she crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed? Could she live with the consequences of exposing secrets that had been buried for years? The faces of her former colleagues flashed through her mind, the young professionals who had trusted her, the executives who had mentored her, even her boss whose casual cruelty had sparked this chain reaction. Each connection represented a thread in the complex tapestry of her professional life, and she was systematically pulling them apart. Despite these reservations, Sandra pressed on. She created a burner phone and began documenting everything, every email sent, every call made, every document shared. If things went south, she needed to protect herself and her newfound allies. The hotel room transformed into a command center, with papers spread across every surface and her laptop constantly running multiple encrypted communication channels. Sleep became an afterthought as adrenaline kept her moving forward, driven by a mixture of righteous anger and desperate hope. The true scope of her actions began to reveal itself in small, incremental ways. A major investor conference scheduled for next week suddenly got cancelled. Industry insiders started whispering about potential scandals at her company. Recruitment efforts slowed to a trickle as talented prospects reconsidered their interest. Each development confirmed that her carefully orchestrated campaign was working, but also raised the stakes exponentially. The corporation wouldn't stay silent forever, and when they struck back, it would be with everything they had. Through it all, Sandra maintained her composure, presenting the same calm, collected demeanor that had characterized her professional life for decades. Only those closest to her noticed the slight tremor in her hands, the dark circles under her eyes, the occasional moment when her mask slipped to reveal the raw emotion beneath. These moments of vulnerability were quickly hidden away, buried under layers of determination and purpose. Time lost meaning as Sandra's operation expanded beyond anything she had initially envisioned. Days blurred together in a haze of encrypted messages, document transfers, and strategic planning sessions with her growing network of allies. The hotel room remained her base of operations, but she ventured out occasionally to use different internet connections, always careful to avoid patterns that could be traced back to her. Each outing felt like stepping into enemy territory, eyes darting around cafes and libraries, pulse racing with every notification sound from her burner phone. The corporation's response came faster than expected. It started subtly, a few probing questions from HR about unusual account activity, followed by IT security notices about potential data breaches. Sandra recognized these as phishing expeditions, attempts to identify the source of the leaks before they could fully understand the extent of the damage. Her network adapted accordingly, implementing even stricter security measures and rotating communication channels daily. The game of cat and mouse intensified, each side trying to outmaneuver the other in a digital chess match that spanned continents and time zones. What truly surprised Sandra was the emotional toll of watching her former colleagues struggle with the unfolding crisis. Through her carefully placed informants, she learned about emergency meetings, panicked executives, and hastily assembled PR campaigns. Some of her former teammates were visibly shaken, while others seemed energized by the chaos, sensing opportunities in the power vacuum. The division among staff mirrored the fragmentation occurring throughout the company's operations, clients withdrawing contracts, partners demanding explanations, investors calling emergency board meetings. Her phone buzzed constantly now, not just with updates from allies but with messages from unexpected sources. Former employees she hadn't spoken to in years reached out, sharing their own stories of mistreatment and expressing gratitude for her actions. Current staff members slipped her confidential information, driven by a mix of moral outrage and self-preservation instincts. Even some mid-level managers began discreetly supporting her cause, providing insider perspectives on how upper management was responding to the crisis. The movement had grown beyond Sandra's control, evolving into something larger and more complex than she had anticipated. The ethical dilemmas multiplied with each passing day. When a junior employee confided that they were being pressured to lie about certain financial practices, Sandra found herself torn between protecting her source and exposing the truth. Every decision carried weight, every action rippled outward in unpredictable ways. The lines between right and wrong blurred as she navigated this moral gray area, where the ends often seemed to justify the means, but at what cost to her soul? Physical exhaustion began manifesting in strange ways. Her handwriting deteriorated into illegible scrawls. She caught herself zoning out during crucial conversations. Meals became irregular, consisting mostly of coffee and whatever snacks the hotel gift shop offered. Yet whenever doubt crept in, threatening to derail her mission, she would scroll through the mounting evidence of corporate malfeasance, the discriminatory hiring practices, the illegal accounting maneuvers, the systematic silencing of dissent, and her resolve would strengthen anew. The media coverage shifted dramatically as more whistleblowers came forward. What had started as speculative rumors transformed into concrete investigations, with reputable journalists digging deeper into the company's history. Sandra watched as headlines appeared in major publications, each one validating her decision while simultaneously raising the stakes. Late-night talk shows joked about the scandal, daytime news programs featured experts analyzing the fallout. Her former employer's carefully cultivated public image crumbled under the weight of undeniable facts. Through it all, Sandra maintained an outward appearance of normalcy. During her rare interactions with hotel staff or fellow guests, she presented herself as just another business traveler, perhaps dealing with some minor work-related stress but nothing extraordinary. This double life took its toll: the constant vigilance, the need to compartmentalize her emotions, the pressure of maintaining multiple identities. Yet each time she considered stepping back, taking a break, or even ending her campaign, she remembered that text message and the cavalier way her decades of service had been dismissed. The final pieces of her plan began falling into place. Regulatory agencies launched formal investigations based on the anonymous tips she had sent weeks earlier. Class action lawsuits materialized seemingly overnight, representing thousands of current and former employees. Major shareholders demanded answers, forcing the board to convene emergency meetings. The corporation's stock price plummeted as investors fled, and acquisition talks with a major competitor abruptly ceased. Every domino she had carefully positioned was now falling, creating a chain reaction that threatened to consume everything. Yet amid this chaos, Sandra noticed something unexpected. The industry as a whole began changing. Competitors implemented new transparency measures, fearing similar exposure. Professional organizations started discussions about corporate ethics and worker protections. Young professionals shared her story as a cautionary tale about workplace rights. The movement she had inadvertently sparked extended far beyond her original intentions, touching lives and influencing policies she had never directly targeted. The irony wasn't lost on her, that her act of defiance, born from personal betrayal and professional humiliation, had catalyzed systemic change across an entire sector. But with this realization came an even heavier burden. The responsibility of having altered so many lives weighed heavily on her shoulders. Every success story she heard, every positive change she witnessed, served as both vindication and condemnation. Had she become the very thing she had once feared, a force of destruction in pursuit of justice? As dawn broke on another sleepless night, Sandra sat surrounded by documents, devices, and empty coffee cups. Outside her window, the city stirred to life, unaware of the storm raging in room 1204. Her phone displayed dozens of unread messages, each one representing another thread in the complex web she had woven. The battle was far from over, and the choices ahead promised to be even more difficult than those she had already faced. But for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection, a acknowledging both the power and the peril of what she had set in motion.